Buccellati. Buccellati is a name that appeared among goldsmiths in Milan around the middle of the 18th century. But it was really my father who re-established the company in the early 20s, giving it a distinctive style and his own personal spirit. Since then, 3 generations have continued with this activity and this noble work, which is a combination between the work of a craftsman and the work of an artist. I am sure that it will still continue in future generations. Of my father, I remember what he told me about himself. One of the things of which he was very proud was that, an orphan, he arrived in Milan when he was very young, in 1906, and immediately started working in a prestigious jeweler's shop, the most important one in Milan at the time, near the famous Scala Opera House. It was patronized by well-known personalities such as composers, poets and writers. He often reminded me of how well he knew Mascagni, Leoncavallo, Boito, and how he remembered the Italian music world at the beginning of the last century. The poet my father remembered most was Gabriele D'Annunzio. Gabriele D'Annunzio had a long correspondence with my father because he loved to commission the objects that he wanted to give to his ladies, and one knows how many he had, by letter. Letters that he always sent through a personal messenger. My father had a favorite letter that read, "My dear Buccellati, you know all too well that I, poor sinner that I am, can never resist temptation." At a certain point in the years 1919, 1920, my father became fully aware of his skills, of the way he wished to express himself, and decided to go on his own and open his first shop. I am sure that one of his big ideas was to reintroduce engraving in jewelry making. From the shaping, that is really the sculpturing of metal, to the silk effect process that gives jewelry a satin finish. But my father went even further. He reproduced laces, brocades and damasks, giving the surfaces of precious boxes an extraordinary effect. Still today, the style he originated is recognized as the Buccellati style. The art of goldsmithing begins with the conception and then the drawing of a design. Drawing is not only for Buccellati but for all of us a way of expressing ourselves. It's rather like our handwriting. Of course, we each have a different style of handwriting. My father's drawings were very different from mine. This is because he was an impressionist. He attached greater importance to the human relationship he had with his craftsmen and explained the details of his drawings to them. If I can make a comparison, the way in which I draw is very different, because when I draw, I also have to think and conceive of how the object will then be completed. Therefore, I feel the need to go into more detail and even almost draw a picture of what the object will look like when it's finished. This was the case, for example, of my latest necklace, which is a magnificent piece of work that I recently completed and that I started working on 2 years ago. I had a number of difficulties before reaching the final design solution, but when the execution was completed, I could say that the drawing appeared almost like a photograph of the necklace as it is today. The talent to draw is also, I think, a matter of genetics. I was one of 5 children, but I was the only one among them all who had the particular gift of showing in a drawing what a piece of jewelry would look like. I have 3 children, and only one, my son Andrea, also has this particular gift. The drawings done by Andrea follow, to a greater extent, the same criteria I adopt, because they are extremely precise. The Buccellati style is not an easy one to explain. Indeed, it is neither an old nor a modern style. I would prefer to define it as classic, where all the traditional techniques used, from engraving to setting, to open work, to the silk effect process, to all the other skills that contribute to the expertise of a goldsmith, converge to form a style that could be called a classic style. There is a big difference between craftsmen today and those I remember 50 years ago or more. I consider myself very lucky, because I was able to hire many young apprentices who were still eager to learn an art, and this is also part of my success. It is a challenge for me personally, but I also intend to pay tribute to all my craftsmen who, with their skills and competence, make it possible for me to do a drawing and see it through to a finished object, perhaps an object that one day in the future may be exhibited in some museums. Certainly, there's one object that is already predestined, and that is a cup that has just been completed. I have called it the Smithsonian Cup, and I have donated it to the Smithsonian National Museum of Natural History on the occasion of this exhibition that honors both my father's and my art. It's a cup that has perhaps involved the most painstaking work. It took me nearly 24 years to complete. Of course, I do not mean 24 years of continuous work, but of constant rethinking, modification and refinement. There's another cup of which I am particularly fond that I called the Trophy Cup of the Muses. It has something that for me is of great value. It combines the 2 colors that are perhaps those I prefer in my life, green and blue. I think that the greatest satisfaction for a jeweler is to see his creation being worn. And I also believe that the main purpose of jewelry is to enhance a woman's beauty. However, I feel that my most beautiful piece of jewelry will be the one I still have to create.